Welcome to another Shay's Insights. I'm David Shay, and I'm so glad you could join us. This week's video is a follow-on to the article we did last week titled Turning Down the Volume in Our Life. And I'm going to try to keep it generally in the same order as the article, and I'll be referring to my notes here just to make sure I do that. But just like the image you can see on the top of the article, the blah, 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 that's what the noise of the world is. And just like in the movie The Matrix, the noise machine has us and we don't even know it. Now with that said, a little statistic from Asurian says that the average American, not just the average person, but the average American checks their phone 96 times per day, which translates to about once every 10 minutes. This becomes like a habit, which I'm going to talk about in just a minute. But just like with caffeine, alcohol, drugs, cannabis, as I said in the article, which stimulate our pleasure center of our brain, and when it stimulates it, and there's a number of reasons why that happens, and I won't get into it here, but our brain gives off a chemical, basically a little hit that makes us feel good. And of course, we are programmed to want to feel good. So whatever habit gives us that feeling, that's what we're going to do. And what they've discovered is that the phones, or gadgets as we refer to them, and the news that comes through them also do the same thing. They stimulate the pleasure center of our brain, so people become addicted. So with that said, the subconscious is the domain of our habits. It's where they live. And in short, the subconscious's purpose is to maintain the behaviors we've learned. I don't know if I mentioned it in this article, I don't think I did, but we don't have to think about how to brush our teeth. We just naturally do. Put the toothpaste on there, brush our teeth in whatever pattern we have. That's a habit, and it's a good one. It serves our higher good, it keeps us healthy. But many of the habits we've established aren't so healthy, including the phone one. So with that in mind, habits are self-reinforcing, and the subconscious can be thought of as a piece of software. We establish a habit, and if we repeat it often enough, it becomes an encoded piece of software that repeats itself. And just like software doesn't care if we're frustrated and we can't seem to get that spell check to work or whatever it is we're trying to do. Even if our habit is unhealthy, unhelpful, and even makes us miserable, the subconscious's job is to maintain it no matter what. And that's why we can find that many of the things we do in life, we can find ourselves frustrated by our own behavior, including this one. Now, with that said, because it is self-reinforcing, and every time we pick up that gadget every 10 minutes, and we get the news, and our low self and our ego get involved with the news of the day, we get a little hit from the pleasure center of our brain, thus reinforcing the behavior. That becomes the noise that I'm talking about. And it really is a distraction, especially for those who are pursuing their spiritual path. I call it the committed spiritual path because I believe that all spiritual paths, whatever they are for each of us, is an advanced spiritual path. I don't want to differentiate that because a lot of people say I'm on an advanced spiritual path as if others who are pursuing their path aren't on the same kind of an advanced spiritual path. They're all advanced. Anyone seeking with their heart and their spirit, they're following that committed spiritual path. So with that, it's a particular distraction for those that are on that because our focus is to stay centered in our higher guidance, that connection, as things come in and the nuances, and it can be the soft voice of the spirit is overridden by the noise of the world. And so that we find ourselves distracted even though we don't even want to be. And because of the way the news and just everything in the media these days on the internet is all funneled to us in a very concentrated form, it's deliberately set up so that they use the correct words and phrases that will key our subconscious for us to pay attention. That's part of the marketing scheme. So with that said, the phones, gadgets, and karma become an issue. So what do I mean by that? As that information comes through, we can generally become involved in things that really don't have anything to do with our lives. The events of the world and those things that happen that are part of the news were created by someone else. and therefore they are the responsibility of others to take care of them. Or there's those in elected office or in appointed positions whose job it is to take care of it. Just as it is, we call the police so that that police officer can go and pursue an investigation. That is for the police officer to do, not for us. But when we allow ourselves to become inordinately involved in the affairs of the world as if they were our own, it's like in the Buddhist and the Hindu teachings of taking on someone else's karma. Or if we just think about it in the vernacular, taking on someone else's problem. It's not our problem, but if we take it on, it then becomes ours. And then our ego gets involved and we become emotionally involved in things that don't serve our life path, have little to do with us. So that's what I mean by phones, gadgets, and karma. So I've talked about the subconscious here. And so if our subconscious could talk, it would say, keep him distracted, keep her distracted. What do I mean by that? Because the subconscious, as we mentioned, is the domain of habits. Habits are, like that software, want to maintain and protect themselves. They want to keep themselves in place. They don't want to be erased or modified. Although there are simple ways to do that, at the conscious level we can find it a little more, I'm going to even use the word daunting to do that. So the reason it keeps us distracted, when we start honing in on those things, those habits and attitudes and behaviors, those, we call it emotional baggage, things from our earlier life and perhaps past lives for those who believe in such things. I do, but others do not. But it really doesn't make any difference because whatever is with us from a past life is with us now, and it's something that we need to deal with now. So if our subconscious could talk, it would say, keep him distracted, keep her distracted so they don't focus on the problem. Because that would mean that my little piece of subprogramming, me being the subconscious, is going to be erased or modified. So it will do that, and it does it in such, I will say, clever ways. We don't even know that we're distracted until hours, days, weeks later, perhaps months later, we realize, hold on, I was going in this direction over here, and now, 6 months later, I got sidetracked on this other thing, and I now have to go circle back and get it done. So with that said, what is the solution? It's like we cannot ignore the events in the world. We need to be kept informed, but not involved. And that's what I talked about in the article. Be aware of the activities in the world. I sometimes read the headlines. Oh, that's happening, that's happening. My higher guidance, if I need to know more about it, will say my guides, the divine, my high self, and the same will happen for you, your guides, your high self, the divine will talk to you and say, oh, you need to read that article. But we read it as in to be informed, not to be involved. Because these problems, again, were created, these situations, these events, this unfoldment of whatever's happening in the world, although sometimes can be tragic and very emotional, were created by others. And our best service is to be involved in our own life, to be that shining example, which I'm going to talk about in just a minute. So how do we do that? I talked about the solution is to be aware and not involved. So what does turning down the volume look like? Our lives become more peaceful as we start, I'm not going to say ignoring, but not getting involved with things out there. At first, it can feel like it's a little bit empty because our brain is no longer giving us the hits from constantly checking the phone and watching the going on the internet, watching TV, whatever it might be, that distraction. So it's going to be a little bit of an uneasiness perhaps, but just know that's part of the subconscious low self reaction to having less stimulation. And once we can know that, we can be okay with it. We can do other things that are positive. And our lives become more peaceful and serene. And how do we maintain that? Treat your home as a sanctuary. In the article I said, our home, our sanctuary. Allow only those things, people, and situations into your home and you can say your yard or whatever, that serve your highest good. Sometimes we can't control that, but often we can. And to the degree we can, keep that those things into our home that serve our life purpose and that of our family and our children. And that causes us to have a shift of focus. Now, the shift of focus is where we focus only on those things that are relevant to our life. Now, we can see an outer situation and say, oh, that's an echo of the situation of my own life. So what it is for us to do is to be involved with the situation in our own life and not be distracted, as the subconscious will want us to do. You know, keep him distracted, keep her distracted. Again, the subconscious, to focus on only those things that are serving us, that are our issues to deal with, and to release, to become aware of. And as we become aware of them, we're not to get involved negatively in our own self-judgment. We're to realize, just like anyone else, we're only human, and we are to bless it and let it go. And we can do that via meditation. We have some meditations out on shaysolistics.com. The monthly meditations are usually about an hour long, and they have various ones you might be called to listen to, and they can help with that. Almost all of them do, in one way or another. Now, with all of this said, and we're getting involved, then people say, well, what about when others need help? And that's a good question, because we all are to be service to others. We are all to be part of our service to humanity as part of our life. But with that said, we are to help others help themselves so that they can get back on their feet and become self-reliant again. And sometimes that may take some time. But we are not to be involved with problematic people who create situations for themselves and others and then take no responsibility for addressing them. And we all know these people. They can stir the pot, so to speak. Next thing you know, they want you and everyone else and us to get involved with this thing that isn't ours. We didn't create it, and because we have a good heart, we want to fix it. But the secret is to help them help themselves to fix it. Do not rescue people from their own problems that they create. So that's kind of the focus of that. And so with that said, as we start focusing on those things that are ours to learn, all the other noise falls away, and we really become honed on our spiritual path, and our life becomes again peaceful and serene. And increasingly, we become a living example of what others want to emulate. They see our lives, they can say, wow, boy, John or Jane, they really have it made. They're focused on their family, they help others, but they don't seem to have all kinds of problems that you can see others have, because they stay focused as we stay focused on our own path and our own focus of our life. And so with that said, it's kind of a quick recap of the article, but I know some people prefer to watch the videos, and that's why I wanted to do an outline. I do recommend reading the article, and if you find yourself caught up in things out there are some wonderful exercises we can do. We've talked about that in the article. The monthly meditations, we have videos, the sound showers, the mantras. They help us become centered in our higher guidance, as I always talk about it, and so that we can focus on that which is why we came here, our life path. And with that, blessings, light, and love, and until next time, have a blessed day. Namaste.